Orphaned alien girl had severe social anxiety until a human gave her a puppy that changed. Jake Mercer stared at the two squirming bundles of fur in the transport crate, wondering how the hell he'd ended up in this situation. The German Shepherd puppies, one with classic black and tan markings, the other a rare solid black, looked up at him with innocent brown eyes that seemed to say, "What now, tough guy?" "Damn it, Cooper," Jake muttered, running a hand through his short blonde hair. His friend had called in a favor, asking him to pick up these pups from the military decommissioning center before they were euthanized. What Cooper hadn't mentioned was that he'd be off-planet for the next 3 weeks, leaving Jake, a retired Terran Special Forces soldier with zero experience with animals, as their temporary guardian. The puppies whined, pressing their noses against the crate's door. Jake sighed and opened it, allowing them to tumble out onto his apartment floor. The black and tan one immediately started exploring, while the solid black one cautiously sniffed Jake's boot. "I don't know the first thing about taking care of dogs," he told them, as if they might offer advice. His sparse apartment in the outer ring of Antares Station wasn't exactly pet-friendly. The station, a massive interplanetary hub at the crossroads of human and alien territories, was no place for animals. Jake's comm unit buzzed, a message from his therapist. "Remember our discussion about responsibility and connection, Jake? Sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we need." "Or exactly what we don't need," he grumbled, watching the black and tan puppy attempt to chew on his coffee table. 3 years since his discharge, and he was still trying to adjust to civilian life. The nightmares hadn't stopped. The missions, the losses, the faces of those he couldn't save. They haunted him. His therapist insisted he needed connection. Jake preferred solitude. The puppies had other ideas. The black one had managed to climb onto his boot and was looking up at him with expectant eyes. "Fine," Jake said, reaching down to scratch behind its ears. "1 week, then Cooper better have a plan." The next morning, Jake found himself wandering through the commercial district of Antares, puppies secured in a makeshift carrier he'd fashioned from an old duffel bag. He needed supplies, food, toys, whatever else puppies required. As he navigated the crowded streets, he realized he'd wandered into the station's alien sector. The architecture shifted from the utilitarian human style to the flowing, organic designs preferred by the Lyrians, a humanoid species known for their blue skin tones and empathic abilities. Jake had fought alongside Lyrian troops during the border wars. They were good soldiers, if a bit too emotional for his taste. As he turned a corner, he noticed a modest building set apart from the others. A sign in multiple languages identified it as the Antares Interspecies Children's Haven, an orphanage. Jake paused, memories surfacing of his own childhood in similar institutions after his parents died in the Proxima Colony disaster. A commotion inside the carrier drew his attention. The black and tan puppy had managed to wiggle its head through an opening and was now struggling to escape. "Hey, stop that!" Jake began, but it was too late. The puppy squirmed free, tumbling to the ground and darting toward the orphanage's open gate. "Shit!" Jake cursed, sprinting after it. The puppy raced across the courtyard where a group of alien children were playing under the watchful eye of their caretakers. Most of the children scattered as Jake and the puppy approached, but one small figure remained frozen in place. A Lyrian girl, no more than 6 or 7 by human standards, with soft blue skin several shades lighter than most of her species. Her snow-white hair hung in long braids, and she wore a simple pale pink dress. She stood apart from the others, eyes wide with fear. The puppy skidded to a halt in front of her, tail wagging furiously. Before Jake could reach them, it rose on its hind legs, front paws bracing against the girl's knees, and licked her face. The transformation was instant. The fear in her eyes gave way to wonder, and a smile, hesitant at first then radiant, spread across her face. She giggled, a sound so pure it stopped Jake in his tracks. "I'm sorry about that," he said, approaching cautiously. "He's still learning manners." The girl didn't respond, her attention fully captured by the puppy now rolling at her feet. Jake knelt down, bringing himself to her level. From his pocket he produced a candy, a sweet, tangy confection, popular among both humans and Lyrians. "Here," he offered, his voice softening instinctively. "It's good, I promise." Hesitantly, the girl accepted the candy, her fingers brushing against his. Up close, Jake noticed the faint shimmer to her skin, a trait of Lyrian nobility. What was a noble child doing in an orphanage? Her name is Inara, a melodic voice said from behind him, and she doesn't speak. Jake turned to find himself face to face with a Lyrian woman. Unlike the girl, her skin was a deep, rich blue, and her eyes, a striking violet, regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Her figure was graceful, accentuated by the flowing robes typical of Lyrian caregivers. Jake Mercer, he introduced himself, standing to his full height. Sorry about the dog. He got away from me. Naya Torrance, she replied, her gaze shifting to the girl and puppy. And I'm not sorry at all. That's the first time I've seen Inara smile since she arrived 3 months ago. Jake watched as Inara cautiously petted the puppy, her movements becoming more confident with each stroke. What's her story? Naya's expression clouded. Her parents were diplomats. Their ship was attacked by pirates in the Vega sector. Inara was the only survivor, found in an escape pod 2 weeks later. She lowered her voice. The trauma left her mute. She hasn't spoken a word since, and she avoids contact with everyone, both children and adults. Except apparently puppies, Jake observed. Apparently, Naya agreed, a small smile playing at her lips. She studied him, her gaze lingering on his posture. Military? Former, Jake corrected. Terran Special Forces. I thought so. You have that look. There was no judgment in her voice, just observation. What brings a former soldier to our little corner of Antares? Jake gestured to the duffel bag, where the second puppy was now poking its head out. Unexpected dog-sitting duty. I was looking for supplies when this one made a break for it. Well, I'm glad he did. Naya's gaze returned to Inara, who was now sitting on the ground, the puppy in her lap. Would you consider bringing him back? For Inara? The request caught Jake off guard. His instinct was to refuse, to maintain the distance he'd carefully cultivated since his discharge. But something about the girl's transformation, the simple joy on her face, made him hesitate. I could come back tomorrow, he found himself saying. Let her play with him for a while. The gratitude in Naya's eyes was immediate and genuine. That would be wonderful. Perhaps around midday? That's when the children have free time. Jake nodded, then whistled softly. The puppy looked up, ears perked, then reluctantly left Inara's lap to trot back to him. The girl's face fell, her eyes filling with tears. Hey, Jake said gently, kneeling before her again. I'll bring him back tomorrow, okay? I promise. He wasn't sure if she understood, but when he placed the puppy briefly back in her arms for a final cuddle, her smile returned. As he finally gathered both puppies and prepared to leave, Jake caught Naya watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. Until tomorrow, Jake Mercer, she said, a hint of warmth coloring her formal tone. Until tomorrow, he replied, surprised to find himself looking forward to it. True to his word, Jake returned to the orphanage the next day. The black and tan puppy, whom he'd started calling Scout, seemed to remember the way, straining at the makeshift leash as they approached the gates. The solid black puppy, now dubbed Shadow, trotted obediently at Jake's side. Naya was waiting for them in the courtyard, her violet eyes lighting up when she spotted Jake. Today she wore a more casual outfit, a fitted tunic in deep indigo that complemented her blue skin, paired with flowing pants that accentuated her graceful movements. You came back, she said, a note of pleasant surprise in her melodic voice. I made a promise, Jake replied simply. Military habits die hard. He'd never broken his word, not even for something as seemingly trivial as a puppy playdate. Naya's lips curved into a smile that sent an unexpected warmth through Jake's chest. Inara has been watching the gate all morning. Come, she's in the garden. As they walked, Jake became acutely aware of Naya's proximity. Her species naturally emitted a subtle scent reminiscent of night-blooming flowers, intoxicating but not overwhelming. He found himself walking closer to her than strictly necessary. So, former military, Naya said conversationally. What brings you to Antares Station? Retirement, Jake said. Or trying to, anyway. The transition to civilian life has been challenging. Naya glanced at him with understanding. The Lyrians have a saying, the warrior's path doesn't end when the sword is sheathed. Your people have a way with words, Jake commented. Did you always work with orphans? No, Naya's expression softened. I was a cultural liaison for the Lyrian Diplomatic Corps. After the border wars, I wanted work that felt more healing. They reached a secluded corner of the garden, where Inara sat alone on a stone bench, her white hair gleaming in the artificial sunlight. When she spotted them, or more accurately, the puppies, her entire face transformed with joy. Scout broke free from Jake's loose grip and bounded toward her. The girl opened her arms wide, catching the puppy as it leaped into her lap. Shadow, more reserved, stayed by Jake's side, watching curiously. "I've never seen her like this," Naya murmured, standing close enough that Jake could feel the warmth radiating from her body. "It's like she's a different child." As they watched Inara play with Scout, Jake noticed a flicker of movement near the garden wall. A figure in nondescript clothing quickly ducked out of sight. His military instincts, never fully dormant, prickled with warning. "Do you get many visitors here?" he asked casually, shifting his position to keep the spot in his peripheral vision. "Not really," Naya replied. "Mostly official inspectors and potential adoptive parents." "Why do you ask?" Jake hesitated. "Just curious." No need to alarm her over what might be nothing. Naya studied his face, clearly sensing there was more to his question. Instead of pressing, she touched his arm lightly. "Would you like some tea? We have a human variety in the kitchen." The touch of her fingers against his skin sent a jolt through him that had nothing to do with his earlier concerns. "I'd like that." As they walked toward the building, Jake discreetly scanned the perimeter. The figure was gone, but he couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. The orphanage kitchen was warm and inviting, with large windows overlooking the play area where Inara remained with the puppies, now under the supervision of another caretaker. Naya moved with fluid grace as she prepared the tea, her movements almost hypnotic. "You're staring, Jake Mercer," she said without turning around, a smile in her voice. "Hard not to," he admitted, not bothering to deny it. "Lyrians move differently than humans." "Is that a compliment?" She turned, handing him a steaming cup, her fingers deliberately brushing against his. "Definitely." Their eyes locked, and the air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Naya leaned against the counter, her violet eyes studying him with open interest. "Humans are fascinating creatures, so physically expressive." Her gaze traveled over his broad shoulders and strong arms, appreciation evident in her expression. "Your species wears emotion on your skin in a way mine cannot." "And your species can literally sense emotions," Jake countered, taking a sip of the surprisingly good tea. "Seems like an unfair advantage." Naya laughed, the sound like music. "Only broad emotions and only with physical contact. We're not mind readers." "So what am I feeling right now?" Jake challenged, setting down his cup and stepping closer. Without hesitation, Naya reached out, her blue fingers tracing the line of his jaw. The touch was electric, sending heat coursing through his body. Her eyes widened slightly. "Attraction," she murmured. "Strong attraction. And protectiveness." She tilted her head, curious. Why protectiveness? Jake gently captured her hand in his, not ready to break the contact. "Old habits. I noticed someone watching the orphanage earlier. Probably nothing, but..." Naya's expression shifted to concern. "What did they look like?" "Couldn't tell. They were keeping to the shadows." Jake frowned. "Has anything unusual happened recently?" Naya hesitated, then sighed. "There have been inquiries about Inara. Official ones through proper channels, but persistent. Her parents were involved in sensitive diplomatic work. Some believe they were targeted specifically." Jake's protective instincts flared. "And Inara might have seen something." "She can't tell us if she did," Naya said softly. "But yes, that's the concern." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of children's laughter from outside. They moved to the window to see Inara now surrounded by several other children, all captivated by the puppy's antics. For once, she wasn't shrinking away from their presence. "You've given her more than just a moment of joy," Naya said, her shoulder pressing against Jake's as they watched. "You've given her a bridge back to others." The warmth of her body against his, the scent of her skin, the genuine emotion in her voice. It all combined to break through the careful walls Jake had built around himself since leaving the service. "I'll keep coming back," he found himself promising, "for Inara. And..." He turned to face Naya, their faces now inches apart. "For other reasons, too." Naya's lips parted slightly, her eyes darkening. I would like that very much, Jake Mercer. The moment hung between them, charged with possibility, before Naya reluctantly stepped back. I should check on the children. As she moved toward the door, Jake caught her hand. I'll come back tomorrow. Same time. Naya's smile was radiant. We'll be waiting. She squeezed his hand once before releasing it and heading outside. Jake watched her go, his body still humming from their brief contact. For the first time in years, he felt something beyond the numbness that had become his constant companion. Something warm and alive and dangerous in its intensity. As he gathered the puppies to leave an hour later, he scanned the perimeter once more. The watcher was gone, but Jake's instincts told him they would be back. And when they did, he would be ready. Over the next week, Jake's daily visits to the orphanage became the highlight of not only Inara's day but his own. The puppies thrived in the attention, especially Scout, who had formed an unbreakable bond with the silent Lyrian girl. Each day, Jake would arrive with both dogs, and each day, Inara's smile would grow a little wider, her posture a little more relaxed. But Jake's military instincts remained on high alert. The mysterious observer had returned twice more, always keeping to the shadows, always vanishing before Jake could get close. After the third sighting, he decided to take action. I'm installing some security measures, he told Naya as they sat in the garden watching Inara play with the puppies. Nothing obvious, just some motion sensors and micro cameras around the perimeter. Naya's violet eyes widened. You really think someone's targeting the orphanage? Not the orphanage, Jake said quietly. Inara. He explained his plan to set up a discreet surveillance system, one that would alert him to any unauthorized presence. What he didn't mention was that he'd already called in a favor from his old military buddy Reyes, who worked in Antari station security. A background check on recent arrivals to the station had flagged several Vexarians, a reptilian species known for their mercenary work with various pirate syndicates. I trust your judgment, Naya said, her hand finding his on the bench between them. The contact sent a familiar warmth through his body. Over the past week, these casual touches had become more frequent, more lingering. But I don't want to frighten the children. They won't even notice, Jake promised. I was Special Forces, remember? Stealth is what we do. Naya's lips curved into a teasing smile. Is that so? Because I notice everything about you, Jake Mercer. The heat in her gaze made his pulse quicken. Their flirtation had been building steadily, a delicious tension neither seemed in a hurry to resolve. In Lyrian culture, he'd learned, courtship was a deliberately prolonged affair, the anticipation considered as important as the culmination. Everything? He challenged, leaning closer. She hummed, her fingers tracing patterns on his palm. The way your eyes scan every room for threats. How you always position yourself between Inara and the entrance. The fact that you've been carrying a concealed weapon since the second day. Jake raised an eyebrow, impressed. And you don't mind? Mind? Naya laughed softly. Jake, in Lyrian culture, protection is the highest form of devotion. It's deeply attractive. Before he could respond to that tantalizing revelation, a staff member approached with a data tablet. Director Torin, this just arrived from the Interspecies Welfare Commission. Naya reluctantly released Jake's hand to accept the tablet. As she read, her expression darkened. This can't be right. What is it? Jake asked, instantly alert. Transfer orders for Inara, Naya said, her voice tight with concern. She's being relocated to a specialized facility for traumatized children on Proxima Station, effective immediately. Jake frowned. May I? He held out his hand for the tablet. Naya passed it over, watching as he examined the document with narrowed eyes. During his military career, Jake had dealt with enough bureaucratic paperwork to spot inconsistencies. This document had several. This is a forgery, he said definitively. A good one, but definitely fake. The authentication codes are formatted incorrectly, and the director's signature doesn't match the one on file. Relief flooded Naya's face. You're certain? Absolutely. Jake handed the tablet back. Someone's trying to get legal custody of Inara. We need to alert station security and the Real Welfare Commission. Naya nodded, already tapping commands into the tablet. I'll file a report immediately, but Jake, who would go to such lengths? I have a theory, he said grimly. I've spotted Vexarian mercenaries on the station. They're known associates of the pirate syndicates that operate in the Vega sector, where Inara's parents were killed. Understanding dawned in Naya's eyes. You think Inara witnessed something during the attack, something that could identify the perpetrators. And they want to make sure she never remembers it, Jake confirmed, or if she does, that she never tells anyone. Naya's hand flew to her mouth. They'd harm a child. They already orphaned her, Jake reminded her gently. But I won't let them get to her. I promise. That evening, after helping install the security measures around the orphanage, Jake found himself alone with Naya in her small office. The puppies were spending the night with Inara, a trial run to see if having Scout permanently might help with her night terrors. Thank you, Naya said, pouring them each a glass of Lyrian spirit, a shimmering blue liquid that smelled of exotic spices. For everything you're doing for Inara. For all of us. Jake accepted the glass, their fingers brushing in the exchange. It's been a long time since I felt useful, he admitted. Since I had someone worth protecting. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken desire. Naya moved closer, her body radiating a warmth that called to him. In my culture, she said softly, we believe that true connection happens when two souls recognize each other across the void of space and time. Her hand came up to rest against his chest, directly over his heart. I recognized you the moment you chased that puppy into our garden, Jake Mercer. Jake covered her hand with his own. I've never believed in fate, he said, his voice rough with emotion. But meeting you, meeting Inara, it feels like coming home after a very long journey. Naya's eyes darkened to a deep violet, her pupils dilating. Among Lyrians, he knew, this was a sign of intense emotion or desire. Stay with me tonight, she whispered. Jake set down his untouched drink and cupped her face in his hands. Are you sure? Your people have customs, protocols. Naya's laugh was low and sensual. My people also believe in seizing joy when it presents itself. Her hands slid up his chest to his shoulders. And you, Jake Mercer, are joy incarnate. Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more urgent, more primal. Jake had been with non-human partners before. Interspecies relationships were common in the military, but nothing had prepared him for the intensity of Naya's touch. Lyrians experienced physical sensation differently, he'd heard, their empathic abilities amplifying both their own pleasure and their partners'. As clothing was discarded and they moved to the small couch in her office, Jake discovered the truth of those rumors. Every caress, every kiss seemed to create a feedback loop of sensation between them. Naya's skin glowed faintly in the dim light, a bioluminescent response to arousal that illuminated their joining in an ethereal blue radiance. Their union transcended the merely physical, becoming something almost spiritual in its intensity. In those moments of shared passion, the barriers Jake had built around his heart since leaving the military crumbled completely. For the first time in years, he felt fully present, fully alive. Afterward, as they lay entwined, Naya traced the scars on his chest with gentle fingers. Your people are remarkable, she murmured. So fragile in form, yet so resilient in spirit. Jake caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Says the woman who runs an orphanage for traumatized children from a dozen different species. It's different, she insisted. We Lyrians are empaths. Compassion is our nature. Humans choose compassion, even when it costs you. That's what makes you extraordinary. Before Jake could respond, his comm unit beeped urgently from the pile of discarded clothing. He reluctantly disentangled himself to retrieve it, instantly alert when he saw Reyes's ID. Mercer, he answered. Jake, we've got a problem. Reyes's voice was tense. Those Vexarians you asked me to track? They just filed a request for entry to the orphanage sector. They're claiming to be Welfare Commission inspectors. Jake's blood ran cold. When? Tomorrow morning, 0800 hours. Jake met Naya's worried gaze. We'll be ready. Dawn broke over Antares Station with the artificial glow programmed to mimic a sunrise. Jake had spent the night at the orphanage, alternating between planning with Naya and checking the security perimeter. By 0600, they had devised an emergency evacuation plan. The human military outpost in Sector 7 owes me a favor, Jake explained as they huddled over a station map in Naya's office. Commander Holt will provide temporary shelter for the children while we sort this out. Naya nodded, her violet eyes shadowed with worry. Despite the gravity of their situation, Jake couldn't help but admire how the morning light played across her blue skin. Their night together had changed something fundamental between them, a connection that transcended physical attraction. "We'll need to move quickly and quietly," she said, her fingers brushing his as she traced the evacuation route. Even that small contact sent a pleasant shiver through him. "The children will be frightened." "We'll tell them it's a field trip," Jake suggested. "Keep it casual. The less they know, the less scared they'll be." As they finalized the details, Jake's comm unit buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Cooper, his friend who'd originally asked him to take the puppies. "Jake, buddy, we need to talk." Cooper's voice was urgent. "Those dogs aren't just regular puppies. They're part of the Canine Enhancement Program, genetically modified military service animals. I was transporting them to the training facility when my ship got rerouted. I should have told you, but it was classified." Jake glanced through the office window to where Inara sat in the common room. Scout curled protectively at her feet. The puppy's ears were perked, his posture alert, not relaxed like a typical dog at rest. "What exactly are their capabilities?" Jake asked, mind racing with possibilities. "Enhanced intelligence, strength, and sensory perception," Cooper replied. "They're bred to bond with their handlers and protect them at all costs." "The black one." "Shadow," Jake supplied. "Right, Shadow. He's designed for stealth operations." The other dash. "Scout." "Scout is a specialized detection and protection unit. They're still puppies, so their training isn't complete, but their instincts are fully operational. They can detect threats and will defend their bonded humans, or in this case, aliens, instinctively." Jake felt a surge of hope. "Cooper, you magnificent bastard. You may have just given us an advantage." After ending the call, Jake quickly explained the situation to Naya. Her eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed thoughtfully. "That explains why Scout has been so protective of Inara," she said. "I noticed he positions himself between her and strangers, and he growls whenever Fren approaches her." "Fren?" Jake frowned. "The kitchen supervisor? The Andorian with the facial ridges?" Naya nodded. "He's always disliked having humans visit the orphanage. Called it cultural contamination. I dismissed it as typical Andorian xenophobia, but now I wonder." Jake's instincts flared. "We need to move now. Get the children ready. I'll alert Commander Holt." Within 30 minutes, they had gathered the 12 orphans, including Inara, in the common room. The staff had been told only that they were taking the children on an impromptu field trip to the human sector. All except Fren, who was conspicuously absent. "Has anyone seen Supervisor Fren this morning?" Naya asked one of the other caregivers, trying to keep her voice casual. "He left early," the young Lyrian male replied. "Said he had an appointment at the administration building." Jake and Naya exchanged alarmed glances. The administration building housed the station's security offices and visitor processing. "We need to hurry," Jake murmured. As they began shepherding the children toward the service exit, Scout suddenly stiffened, his hackles rising. A low growl emanated from his throat as he positioned himself in front of Inara. Shadow at Jake's side exhibited similar behavior, ears flattened and teeth bared toward the main entrance. "They sense something," Jake said quietly, unholstering the pulse pistol concealed beneath his jacket. "Naya, get the children moving. Now!" Naya didn't hesitate, quickly organizing the staff to lead the children through the service corridor. Inara, however, refused to move, clinging to Scout's fur with trembling hands. "I'll bring her," Jake assured Naya. "Go." As the others disappeared down the corridor, Jake knelt beside Inara. "It's okay," he said gently. "Scout will protect you, and so will I. But we need to go somewhere safe." The girl's wide eyes met his, filled with fear but also trust. She nodded slightly, allowing Jake to lift her into his arms. Scout stayed pressed against his leg, while Shadow took up a position slightly ahead, leading the way. They had just reached the service exit when the main doors slid open. 3 Vexarians entered, their reptilian features set in cold determination. They wore the insignia of the Welfare Commission, but Jake immediately spotted the bulges of concealed weapons beneath their official-looking uniforms. "Stay back," Jake whispered to Inara, setting her down behind a storage unit. "Scout, guard." The puppy immediately positioned himself in front of the girl, body tense and ready. Jake stepped forward, Shadow at his side. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" he called, keeping his weapon hidden but ready. "The orphanage is closed for a field trip today." The lead Vexarian's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "We have authorization to inspect the premises," he said, his voice a dry rasp. "Where is Director Torin?" "She's accompanying the children," Jake replied evenly. "I'm security consultant Jake Mercer. I'd be happy to see your credentials." The Vexarians exchanged glances. "We need to speak with the Lyrian child, Inara," the leader continued, ignoring Jake's request. "It's a matter of interstellar security." "Any such request would go through proper channels," Jake countered, slowly moving to keep himself between the intruders and Inara's hiding place, "and would require the presence of her legal guardian." The lead Vexarian's patience visibly thinned. "Human," he hissed, "this doesn't concern you. Step aside." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Jake replied, his hand moving to his concealed weapon. The tension broke as the doors behind the Vexarian slid open again, revealing Fren. The Andorian's eyes widened in surprise at finding Jake still present. "You were supposed to be gone," he blurted, then immediately realized his mistake. The lead Vexarian turned on Fren with a snarl. "You said the human would be detained by security." Jake seized the moment of distraction. "Shadow, engage!" The black puppy launched forward with surprising speed and strength for his size, latching onto the nearest Vexarian's arm. Simultaneously, Jake drew his pulse pistol and fired, catching the lead Vexarian in the shoulder. Chaos erupted. Fren attempted to flee, but the third Vexarian grabbed him, clearly viewing the Andorian as responsible for the ambush. Jake used the confusion to back toward Inara's hiding place. "Run!" he urged her, firing another shot to keep the attackers at bay. To his surprise, Inara darted out from her hiding place, not toward the exit, but toward the fallen lead Vexarian. Before Jake could stop her, she had reached the alien and was staring intently at his face. "Inara, no!" Jake lunged forward, heart in his throat. But what happened next stopped him cold. Scout bounded to Inara's side, not attacking but standing guard as the girl reached out and touched the Vexarian's face. Then, for the first time since Jake had met her, Inara spoke. "You killed my parents," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I saw you." The Vexarian's yellow eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with malice. "Then you'll join them, little one," he hissed, reaching for a concealed blade. Scout reacted instantly, lunging forward with a ferocity that belied his puppy appearance. His jaws clamped around the Vexarian's wrist with enough force to make the alien scream in pain, the blade clattering to the floor. Jake scooped Inara up with one arm, keeping his weapon trained on the other intruders. "Scout, Shadow to me!" Both puppies immediately disengaged and flanked him as he backed toward the exit. Inara clutched tightly against his chest. The girl was trembling, but her face showed determination rather than fear. "You're very brave," Jake told her as they hurried down the service corridor, "and we're going to keep you safe. I promise." Inara's small arms tightened around his neck. "I know," she whispered. "You and Scout and Naya, my new family." The simple declaration hit Jake with unexpected force. Family. It was something he hadn't allowed himself to consider since leaving the military. The possibility of belonging somewhere, to someone. As they rounded the corner to join the others, Jake made a silent vow. He would protect this newfound family, no matter what it took. Jake led Inara through the service corridor, the puppies flanking them protectively. His comm unit buzzed with Naya's worried voice. "Jake? Where are you?" "We've reached the transit hub, but station security is everywhere. They're checking all passengers." "Change of plans," Jake replied, ducking into a maintenance alcove. "The Vexarians found us. Friend sold us out." Naya's sharp intake of breath carried through the comm. "Is Inara?" "She's safe," Jake assured her, "and talking." Naya, she identified one of the Vexarians as her parents' killer. A moment of stunned silence followed. "Where will you go?" Jake studied the station schematics on his wrist display. "Maintenance tunnels. Section 42. B, there's an access point near your position. Get the other children to Commander Holt, then meet us there." "Be careful," Naya's voice softened. "Both of you." Jake ended the transmission and knelt before Inara. "We're going to play a game," he explained gently. "Like hide and seek, but in the station's secret tunnels. Can you be very quiet?" Inara nodded solemnly. "They want the treaty," she whispered. Jake blinked in surprise. What treaty? The one my parents made, between humans and the Dravari. Jake's blood ran cold. The Dravari were a notoriously aggressive species that had been in conflict with multiple civilizations for decades. Rumors of peace talks had circulated in military channels before his retirement, but nothing concrete. Your parents were negotiating a peace treaty? Inara nodded. Secret talks. The bad ones don't want peace, they make money from war. The pieces clicked into place. Pirate syndicates profited enormously from ongoing conflicts, smuggling weapons and supplies through blockades. A human Dravari peace treaty would cut off a major revenue stream. Do you know where the treaty is? Jake asked carefully. Inara tapped her temple. In here. Father made me memorize a code. Said only give it to humans or mother's people. Jake's respect for the girl's parents surged. They'd entrusted their most precious asset, both the treaty and their daughter, to each other. You've been very brave keeping that secret, Jake told her. Now we need to get you somewhere safe. They reached a maintenance hatch and Jake punched in his security override, a parting gift from his military days. The hatch slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel bathed in dim emergency lighting. Scout, lead, Jake commanded. The puppy immediately moved forward, nose working to detect any threats. Shadow, guard rear. With Inara securely in his arms, Jake entered the tunnel. These maintenance passages ran throughout the station, allowing repair crews to access critical systems. Few people knew the full layout, but Jake had made it his business to learn every escape route when he first arrived on Antares. They moved swiftly through the labyrinth of passages, Scout alerting them to avoid areas where station personnel were working. After 20 minutes of careful navigation, they reached the rendezvous point. Naya was already waiting, her face lighting up with relief when she saw them. Thank the stars, she breathed, embracing them both. The other children are safe with Commander Holt. He's deployed a security team to find the Vexarians. Jake set Inara down, and the girl immediately ran to Naya, hugging her tightly. I talked, she announced proudly. I heard, Naya said, smiling through tears. I'm so proud of you. Jake checked his tactical display. We're not out of danger yet. Station security reports multiple Vexarian signatures converging on this sector. They've called in reinforcements. Naya's expression hardened. What do they want? A peace treaty, Jake explained, gesturing to Inara. Her parents were negotiating between humans and the Dravari. The pirates want to stop it. Naya's violet eyes widened. That would change the power balance in 3 sectors. Exactly. Jake ran a hand through his short hair. We need to get Inara to the human embassy. They can extract the treaty information and provide protection. The main routes will be watched, Naya pointed out. Jake nodded grimly. That's why we're staying in the tunnels. There's a maintenance shaft that runs directly beneath the human sector. It's a tight squeeze, but we can make it. As they prepared to move out, Jake pulled Naya aside. This is going to get worse before it gets better, he warned quietly. If you want to join the others at the military outpost, I wouldn't blame you. Naya's response was to cup his face in her hands and kiss him fiercely. My place is with you and Inara, she said when they parted. We started this together. We'll finish it together. The intensity of her gaze, the determination in her voice, it all combined to create a surge of emotion Jake hadn't expected. In the midst of danger, surrounded by enemies, he found himself falling in love. When this is over, he murmured, his forehead resting against hers, I want more than just moments stolen between crises. I want mornings and evenings and everything in between. Naya's lips curved into a smile. Are you proposing a formal courtship, Jake Mercer? I'm proposing whatever you want to call it, he replied, his thumb tracing the delicate curve of her cheek. As long as it means we're together. In Lyrian tradition, Naya said softly, a couple who faces death together and survives is already bonded in the deepest way. We call it Kethvari, soul forged. Soul forged, Jake repeated, liking the sound of it. I can work with that. Their moment was interrupted by Scout's low growl. The puppy was staring intently at a junction 30 meters ahead, hackles raised. Company, Jake whispered, drawing his weapon. Naya, take Inara and fall back to junction 12. I'll hold them off. No, Inara said suddenly, her small voice firm. Together. Family stays together. Jake and Naya exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. They'd barely known each other 2 weeks, Yet somehow this child, this brave, remarkable child, had bound them together into something that felt like family. "Okay," Jake conceded, "but stay behind me." They advanced cautiously toward the junction, the puppies moving in perfect tandem. As they approached, Jake detected movement, shadows shifting against the dim emergency lighting. "Vexarians," he confirmed, his enhanced vision making out the distinctive silhouettes. "At least 4 of them." "They're blocking our path to the human sector," Naya observed. Jake nodded grimly. "Time for Plan B." He tapped his comm unit. "Reyes, you copy?" "Loud and clear, Mercer," came the immediate response. "What's your position?" "Maintenance tunnel 42B, approaching junction 15. We've got Vexarian mercenaries blocking our route to the embassy." "Copy that. I've got a security team en route to your position. ETA 5 minutes." "We might not have 5 minutes," Jake replied, eyeing the advancing shadows. "Any other options?" There was a pause before Reyes responded. "There's an emergency evacuation pod at Junction 18. It's designed for station personnel to escape during catastrophic failures. One-way trip to the emergency platform in orbit." "That'll work," Jake decided. "We'll head there now." He turned to Naya and Inara. "Change of plans. We're going up." They backtracked quickly, taking an alternate route toward Junction 18. The maintenance tunnels grew narrower, the ceiling lower, forcing Jake to crouch as they moved. "Almost there," he encouraged as they rounded the final bend. The evacuation pod was a sleek, cylindrical craft designed to hold up to 6 people. Jake quickly activated the launch sequence while Naya helped Inara inside. "Scout, shadow in!" Jake commanded, and the puppies obediently jumped into the pod. Just as Jake was about to enter, a pulse blast struck the wall inches from his head. He spun, weapon raised, to find the lead Vexarian, the one Inara had identified, standing at the end of the corridor. "The treaty dies with her," the alien hissed, raising his weapon for another shot. Jake fired first, catching the Vexarian in the shoulder, but more mercenaries were appearing behind their leader. "Jake!" Naya called urgently from inside the pod. "We have to launch now!" Making a split-second decision, Jake slammed the pod's door control, sealing Naya, Inara, and the puppies safely inside. Through the viewport, he saw Naya's horrified expression as she realized what he was doing. "Get her to the embassy," he said into his comm, backing away from the pod as pulse fire erupted around him. "I'll hold them here." "Jake, no!" Naya's voice cracked with emotion. "Launch the pod, Naya," he insisted. "I'll find another way out." The last thing he saw before turning to face the advancing mercenaries was Inara's small hand pressed against the viewport, her eyes wide with fear and determination. Then the evacuation pod shot upward through its launch tube, carrying his newfound family to safety. Jake turned to face the Vexarians, a grim smile spreading across his face. "All right, gentlemen," he said, checking his weapons charge. "Let's dance." Jake pressed his back against the maintenance tunnel wall, pulse pistol gripped firmly in his hand. The Vexarians advanced cautiously, their reptilian eyes gleaming in the dim emergency lighting. He counted 5 of them, led by the scarred mercenary Inara had identified. "Just one human," the leader hissed to his companions. "Take him alive if possible. He may know the code." Jake allowed himself a grim smile. They had no idea the treaty information was already safely away with Inara. All he needed to do was buy time for the evacuation pod to reach the emergency platform. "Sorry to disappoint," Jake called out, "but I'm not the surrendering type." He fired 2 quick shots, forcing the Vexarians to scatter for cover. The confined space of the tunnel worked to his advantage, preventing them from flanking him. Still, he was outnumbered and outgunned. Just as the mercenaries prepared to rush his position, the tunnel flooded with blinding light. A thunderous voice echoed through the passage. "This is Commander Holt, Terran Military Security. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately." A squad of heavily armed human soldiers poured into the junction behind the Vexarians, pulse rifles trained on the mercenaries. Jake recognized Reyes among them, the security officer giving him a quick nod. The Vexarians, caught between Jake and the military squad, hesitated only briefly before their leader snarled an order in their native tongue. They spun toward the soldiers, weapons raised. It was the last mistake they would make. The human squad opened fire with military precision, dropping 3 mercenaries in the first volley. The remaining 2, including the leader, threw down their weapons in surrender. Commander Holt, a burly man with a salt and pepper beard, approached as his team secured the prisoners. "Cutting it a bit close, weren't you, Mercer?" Jake holstered his weapon, relief washing through him. "Perfect timing as always, Commander. How did you find me?" "Thank your friend Cooper," Holt replied with a chuckle. "Those puppies of yours have built-in tracking beacons, standard for military service animals. When the evacuation pod launched, he triangulated your position and contacted me." Jake shook his head, grinning despite his exhaustion. "Remind me to buy that man a drink." "Later," Holt said, his expression turning serious. "Right now, we need to get you to the embassy. Your Lyrian friend caused quite a stir when she arrived with the girl. The ambassador himself is debriefing them." The human embassy occupied the most secure section of Anteri Station, its architecture distinctly Terran amid the diverse alien designs. Jake was escorted directly to the diplomatic wing, his heart racing at the thought of seeing Naya and Inara again. The doors to the ambassador's private office slid open to reveal a scene that stopped Jake in his tracks. Inara sat on a plush couch, Scout curled protectively in her lap, while Naya stood nearby speaking intently with Ambassador Willis. Shadow, detecting Jake's presence, bounded across the room to greet him. Inara spotted him next. "Jake!" she cried, her face lighting up with joy. She scrambled off the couch and ran to him, Scout at her heels. Jake knelt to catch her in a tight embrace, his throat tight with emotion. "Hey, kiddo, you did great." Naya approached more slowly, her violet eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You impossible, reckless, wonderful man," she whispered, before pulling him into a kiss that left no doubt about her feelings. When they finally parted, Ambassador Willis cleared his throat discreetly. "Mr. Mercer, your timing is impeccable. Miss Inara has just finished providing us with the treaty information. It's revolutionary." Jake kept his arm around Naya's waist as he addressed the ambassador. "How so?" "The treaty doesn't just establish peace between humans and the Dravari," Willis explained. "It creates a framework for a joint defensive alliance against pirate syndicates operating in the neutral zones. If ratified, it would effectively end the profitability of smuggling operations across 3 sectors." "No wonder they wanted to stop it," Jake mused. "Indeed." The ambassador's expression was solemn. Inara's parents were visionaries. Their work will save countless lives. Inara tugged at Jake's hand. "Father said humans were the only ones the Dravari respected. Because you fight hard but fair." Jake exchanged a glance with Naya, who smiled warmly. "Humanity, in all its stubborn glory," she murmured. "There's something else," Ambassador Willis added. "Given the circumstances and Inara's unique position as the sole witness to her parents' assassination, we believe she would be safer under Terran protection. The adoption protocols—" "Adoption?" Jake interrupted, startled. Naya squeezed his hand. "I may have started the paperwork," she admitted, "for both of us. As co-guardians." Jake stared at her in amazement. "You want us to adopt her? Together? Unless you object." Naya's confidence faltered slightly. "I know it's sudden, but after everything we've been through—" "Object?" Jake laughed, pulling her close again. "Naya, I was ready to follow you and Inara across the galaxy if I had to. A family with you is everything I never knew I wanted." Inara beamed up at them, her earlier anxiety completely transformed. "And Scout and Shadow too?" "The whole pack," Jake confirmed, ruffling her white hair affectionately. Ambassador Willis smiled. "I'll expedite the paperwork. In the meantime, we've arranged secure quarters for you here at the embassy until the treaty signing ceremony next week. Inara will be the guest of honor." 3 days later, Jake stood on the embassy's private balcony overlooking Anteri Station's central hub. The artificial night cycle had begun, the vast dome overhead projecting a stunning simulation of Earth's night sky. Warm arms encircled him from behind, and Naya's familiar scent enveloped him as she pressed against his back. "She's finally asleep," she murmured. "Scout standing guard as usual." Jake turned in her embrace, drinking in the sight of her. In the simulated moonlight, her blue skin seemed to glow with an inner radiance. "You're beautiful," he said simply. Naya's lips curved in a smile that still made his heart race. "And you're changing the subject. We were discussing living arrangements once the treaty is signed." "Right." Jake tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Earth or Lyria? Quite the choice." "There's a third option," Naya suggested. The treaty includes provisions for a joint human-Dravari security force. They'll need experienced officers familiar with both cultures. Are you suggesting we join up? Jake asked, intrigued. I'm suggesting we go where we're needed, Naya replied. Where Inara can grow up safe, learning about both her heritages. Where these remarkable puppies can fulfill their potential. Jake considered it, imagining a future he'd never dared dream of before. A family, a purpose, a home among the stars. Wherever we go, he said finally, we go together. Together, Naya agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that spoke of passion, commitment, and the adventures yet to come. Later that night, as they lay entwined in the embassy's luxurious guest quarters, Jake marveled at how completely his life had changed in just 2 weeks. From solitary retirement to passionate love. From emptiness to family. All because of 2 puppies and a silent, blue-skinned girl who'd needed them as much as they'd needed her. What are you thinking about? Naya asked, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his chest. Fate, Jake replied. Cooper calling in that favor. The puppy escaping. Finding Inara. Finding you. Naya's expression turned thoughtful. In Lyrian philosophy, we believe the universe conspires to bring together souls that belong with each other. Not by chance, but by design. Soul Forge, Jake remembered. Yes. Naya's smile was radiant. Some bonds transcend species, transcend logic. They simply are. Jake pulled her closer, overwhelmed by gratitude for this unexpected gift. I like that philosophy. A soft knock at their door interrupted the moment. Jake pulled on a robe and opened it to find Inara standing there, Scout at her side. The girl's eyes were wide, but not with fear. I had a dream, she said, about mother and father. They were happy. Jake knelt to her level. That's good, isn't it? Inara nodded solemnly. They said I'm where I belong now, with my new family. She hesitated, then asked in a small voice, Can I stay with you tonight? Just this once? Jake glanced back at Naya, who was already making room in the large bed. Of course you can, sweetheart. Soon they were settled, Jake, Naya, Inara between them, and the puppies curled at the foot of the bed. A family forged through chance, courage, and the healing power of connection. As Inara drifted back to sleep, her small hand clutched in his, Jake reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them together. A retired soldier with no direction, a dedicated caregiver with boundless compassion, a traumatized child silenced by grief. 2 genetically enhanced puppies destined for military service. Separately, they had been broken or incomplete. Together, they were whole. In the artificial moonlight streaming through the embassy windows, Jake made a silent vow to protect this precious new family with everything he had. And as if sensing his thoughts, Naya reached across Inara to take his hand, their fingers intertwining in a promise that needed no words. The universe, it seemed, had known exactly what they all needed.